Hello and welcome to the Horizon League One Team Summer Series. Everything's on Zoom, so why wouldn't we have some stuff on Zoom for you in the summer here at the Horizon League? I'm Will Haskett, pleased and privileged to be here to bring you this three-part series and what has been probably the most fascinating, frustrating, interesting, however you want to view it, last few months for all of us, no matter our relationship with the Horizon League. And while the COVID-19 pandemic has certainly reshaped the way that we think about college athletics and what our future, short-term and long-term, sort of looks like, we'd be certainly remiss if we didn't spend some time on what has become a huge cultural moment for our society and for college athletics over the last month and a half or so. And so we're dedicating the first part of this three-part series to racial injustice and everything that is going in the wake of the George Floyd murders and the Black Lives Matter movement. I would be remiss if I didn't thank the Horizon League for taking the leadership opportunity to make this happen. And while so many leagues and organizations have rightfully put out statements at the beginning of this, if we truly want to see social justice and change happen, continuing the conversation for lasting impact is what we hopefully are trying to do today. So thank you to the Horizon League for making this possible. That is about as long as I'm going to hopefully talk throughout the course of this as the moderator for this, because I, like so many others, have really used the last several weeks to listen, to learn, and to try and have a greater understanding of what we can do to make our country better moving forward. And so with that, I'd like to welcome in our esteemed panel of guests from all walks of life, young and experienced around the Horizon League. First, Jonelle White. She's a Senior Associate Athletic Director in the SWA at IUPUI, also played volleyball at Auburn. And I would invite all of them to just sort of share what they would like to get out of today's conversation. Hello, Jonelle.
Hello. Thank you so much, Will, for that introduction. And I, too, want to thank the Horizon League for taking bold steps to start these conversations and present these platforms, not just for our administrators and for everybody, but most importantly for our student athletes. They need to know that we have their back, that we're here for them, as well as our colleagues. So excited to be a part of this today and really just continuing to move the conversations forward. As I've mentioned to some colleagues across this league as well as outside, I'm ready for some solutions. I'm ready to move towards solutions. These conversations are great. And like I said, I'm very happy that they're happening. I've been able to participate on several webinars, and those candid conversations that should have been held before now are now being held. So we're very happy about that, but we need to work towards solutions and really making a difference. And so that's what I'm most looking forward here, is that what we present maybe aid someone in moving toward that solution realm. So thank you again.
And I think that's so important because today not only are we going to discuss what we have learned, but then also action items and talking points to take away from this so that all of our constituents, whether that be student athletes, administrators, coaches, constituents, media members, can all move forward in the proper channels to make sure that real impact is possible. Kayla Thompson is a rising senior at Northern Kentucky. She is a track athlete, also the vice president of Northern Kentucky's Student NAACP chapter. Hi, Kayla.
Hi, how are you guys? It's so good to see you all. And I'm really excited to be here. With everything that's happening, it's kind of a lot to take in, but it's been happening for a really long time. So I think personally, I've been affected by racism. And I also think that within my generation, we're really fired up. We don't want to see any more senseless killings. We want reform. I mean, we want to see each other grow and thrive. And we want to live in a place where when we have children, our children and then their children can feel safe, included, and especially understood. I think the greatest thing that could be taken away from this at the end of this, hopefully, is learning from others how exactly we can work together in order to ensure sensitivity and ensure that other students, our voices are heard, but also coming from an administrative standpoint, that there is listening and a will to want to take the time to make improvements and come to a better understanding. That's all.
Beautifully said. Looking forward to the student athlete perspective from Kayla on this one. Mike Peterson is a board of trustees member at Youngstown State, a former football athlete for the Penguins as well. Also a former law enforcement, now a business owner in the community. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Will. Hey, glad to see everyone out there. And thank you very much, Horizon League, for allowing us the opportunity to talk. I'm just excited for the communication. I think we're at a point in our society that not having a conversation at this point in time has been irresponsible. I do think it allows all of us to be able to share what our feelings and our experiences are, and then to grow from that. What I'm excited about is when this is all over is breaking the huddle. The huddle's not the game. This will give us the time to, once we talk, to actually go out and execute it, and to see young folks and folks that are experienced. By the way, Will, great recovery when you said young and experienced. I like that. Get together and share. And, you know, Kayla, what you just said, I think about it all the time. I have 2 daughters, and this to me will give them an opportunity to live in a country where they have the opportunity to be, to grow, and to live regardless of what they look like, how the color of their skin. So I'm excited for the opportunity.
No doubt. No doubt. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Doria Glantz is a counseling professor at Northern Kentucky, also played basketball at Wright State. So we've got plenty of Horizon League representation from Doria's standpoint. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you, guys. It's good to see you all this morning. I think that the thing that I'm most excited about that we're doing this morning and that the Horizon League is doing this series is because I know that when I was a student athlete, it was just an opportunity and a time in my life where I was so hungry for conversations with people that were different than me. And it's just such a wonderful opportunity and a time in young people's lives to really grow and learn so much from each other. And so I think that just that we're taking this opportunity and seizing this moment, as Mike just said, it's been irresponsible that we haven't done so up until now. So I think that we're taking this momentum and moving forward with it is a really positive step. And I'm excited to see what we can do to keep this momentum going moving forward.
All right. And with that, let's dive right into the actual conversation. I feel like this is coming at an important time in where we are right now as a country and a society, because we are sort of moving away from the short-term reaction into what the actual long-term application of everything that has happened over the last several weeks is going to do. And so with that in mind, with the news cycle as it is and the reports and everything maybe starting to die down a little bit in terms of how you are interacting with the stories out there, what should we be doing right now in reaction, in the wake of the protests, the movement, and all of these social and justice reforms that we've had? I'll start from Kayla's perspective from a student athlete.
Cool. So I think that ultimately, to me, sensitivity is key. When things like this is happening in our country, it's actually happening all around the world. But, you know, we, from a standpoint, we see it happening in our country because this is the newsreel we're watching. So, but at what point does everyone get to take a breath and feel safe and feel like they're in a good place? So I think it can start within individual departments, ensuring that some sort of diversity and inclusion training, as well as like rules and regulations and guidelines that's going to be followed when certain things happen. Like even if it's between a coach and a student, or even if it's just between students, because that does happen. I think that from an administration standpoint, nothing should be swept under the rug, and certain things shouldn't be tolerated. And so I'll just tell a brief story. One of my fellow track athletes, she goes to a different school. She had told me that she had a coach that had consistently made racially insensitive remarks to her. When she had asked her, you know, this makes me uncomfortable. I would really prefer, you know, if you wouldn't say those things to me, especially around my teammates. It makes me and my work feel like I've been, in a sense, kind of put down, you know, like my work isn't as good as everybody else. And he told her that she was being too sensitive. So when she took it to his superior, he said the same thing to her, that she was being too sensitive, and what they were saying to her, it was making her uncomfortable clearly enough to where she felt like she needed to take it even higher. So she took it to administration, and what they did, they sat her down in the room with the coach and they basically had a conversation, and what she said in a safe space was no longer a safe space. She started to feel like she was being attacked for voicing her concerns. So I believe that things like that shouldn't be tolerated. And I think the quickest fix that we can do in times like these is just listen to your students when they're voicing their concerns, and not being afraid to, you know, take actions to protect them. You know, like all we want to do is feel safe and included coming to school. You know, I come from 4 hours away. You know, I know my parents, they want to know that, you know, they're sending me to a safe place. They're sending me to a place where I can feel included, and they're ensuring that I'm safe, not just physically, but emotionally. So if short term, we can ensure that everyone's taking the proper steps to make sure that that can happen, I think something beautiful can come from that, because then we're not just, you know, we're not just talking about it. It's also, you know, you see administrators taking the proper steps to be like, I hear you. I don't want you to feel like that. I want you to feel safe. And I think that's the biggest, you know, takeaway I can give from all of that. So.
Yeah. And Janelle, from an administrative standpoint, what's so interesting about this time is that we're also shut down. I mean, athletics doesn't look the way that it once did. You now have an opportunity to really address a lot of these individual situations, and then also be in a position where, you know, student athletes aren't on campuses and working out. And we've gotten away from the routine of just the practice, the day in and day out sort of stuff. So what does this time allow administratively organizations to do to make sure that some of these actions are processed moving forward?
Absolutely. You know, I think Kayla hit the nail on the head in mentioning sensitivity, in mentioning continuing the conversation. That's the biggest piece. And we have platforms like Zoom. We have platforms like Microsoft Teams. There's ways to get your student athletes and your administration and your coaches together to start having these conversations. And, you know, I would suggest small groups, maybe a large group initially, so everybody feels comfortable. You know, we continue to talk about that word of comfort, but at some point in time, we're all going to have to get uncomfortable. We're all going to have to make ourselves vulnerable and be okay with that. And that's going to be difficult. But, you know, that's where the solutions come from. When we really sit back and we listen, and we talk about active listening, you have to listen, hear, sit with it for a little bit, and really understand either what your student athletes are saying to you or what your colleagues are saying to you and how they feel. You've probably never felt that emotion. You don't know what that feels like, but don't dismiss what they're saying. And the other piece that I want to add from an administrative standpoint is that we have to be intentional. We can't just have something to have something. And as we say, check off a box. It needs to be very intentional. It needs to be heartfelt, if you will, that everyone feels like, wow, that was hard, but you know what, we're moving in the right direction. And everyone pretty much knows that the NCAA, we passed a rule where now every institution effective August 1 has to identify a diversity and inclusion officer, if you will. And if you don't have one in athletics, that's fine. You can utilize someone on your campus. Most campuses have a diversity, equity, inclusion office or something like that. So this is the time right now, because we're not on campus. Yes, we have our committees. We're trying to restart. We're trying to get everybody back as safely as possible. But this is the time to connect with those individuals and start having those conversations in what is this going to look like? How can we make this informative, and what can we do to really start moving in the right direction? And that's when colleagues will know, that's when administrative coaches, student athletes will know that you really mean business from an administrative standpoint.
You know, and you talk about making sure that these conversations continue to happen. And I think about it as at the time that we are recording this, we're sort of in the wake of the NASCAR Bubba Wallace situation. And I was just having a conversation with my majority white friends over the course of the last couple of days, where we're losing sight of the conversation because of the semantics of when a noose was hung in a particular type of garage. And I think that's so important that we don't lose sight of what the actual crux of the conversations are. And so, Mike, I'll ask you, what should we make sure that we are taking away from all of these conversations to continue talking about moving forward? Because I have tried my best to listen as much as possible, but I have made a pact with myself that I will not be silent moving forward. I want to make sure, though, that I'm listening to the right parts of the conversation. What should we be taking out of those conversations?
So I think just to listen. And look, we keep talking about communication here, but and sometimes we get a little hypocritical, everyone in this conversation, because if I'm going to talk to you, I need to be honest and be real. And maybe something that I say may sound offensive, But if it's my experience and my thoughts, let me get it out so that way you can help me progress and say, you know what, dude, okay, I'm so sorry I said dude, I apologize. Bad habit. But I get it now. I never thought of it that way, right? Listen, I had someone say to me a couple years ago, he said, you know, my dad raised me to believe that Martin Luther King was like this agitator, right? And, you know, my initial reaction was like, you know, are you crazy? Are you an idiot? Right? And then it hit me. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. That's how his dad raised him. What an awesome opportunity for me to sit down and share with him the joys and the blessings of Martin Luther King and the message, so on and so forth. So if we can be honest with each other, if we allow, whether you black, white, red, yellow, everyone to sit down and to be able to be honest and communicate. Look, we all have different experiences. There are folks on here that are white. You still have different experiences. Folks on this call that are black, we have had different experiences. Growth comes from actually being able to talk about it and not being afraid because of something I say or didn't say to be judged by. That this communication piece and what we're doing now, we debate instead of converse, right? So it's all about who's right and who's wrong instead of, wow, man, I never thought about that. I'll just leave you with this on this topic. When I was in high school, this is why I'm so passionate about this part. When I was in high school, I went to Boys State. You know, I don't know if you guys know what Boys and Girls State is outside of Ohio, but I'm not sure how I got picked academically. But anyway, I went to Boys State, and my roommate was this white kid from a rural part of Ohio, and he had never met a black person. So he didn't speak to me, okay? So while we're in this room, you know, I'm getting a little irritated because he didn't say a word. So now I'm assuming this kid's, you know, the head of the clan, right? I mean, just a pure racist. So I decide he's not going to speak to me. Not only am I not going to speak to him, right? I'm going to let him know I don't like him. So we never said a word, and I would, you know, have my mean face on, and he would have his on. And then on the third day there, something happened, and we just began to talk. Now, he's like, Mike, I've never met a black person in my life, right? And where I grew up, we didn't have a whole lot of interaction with white folks. So we sat down and we talked, and let me tell you, well, we became friends in high school and then talked long after we left to go to college. That's communication. That is, we had a real conversation, real dialogue, and it made a huge difference. So hopefully that is what we take from this. Not I'm right, you're right. It's like, man, let's understand each other, because once we understand each other, we can help each other.
Yeah, and I'm curious too, Mike, because with a previous career in law enforcement too, I feel like that's sort of become a polarizing, are we really having a conversation, or are we taking sort of sides in the last couple of weeks and all of these sort of, the protests to the conversations to the politicization within the media and everything that's going on with it. What are your thoughts in terms of the conversations that are maybe lost within that?
So listen, you know, I was in law enforcement for about 11 years, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. I worked the most dangerous zone in the city, and I loved it. I grew up in that type of environment and area, so for me, it was an opportunity to give back. I met a lot of good brothers and sisters, white and black, who were law enforcement officers. And so I do challenge people this, and I will always challenge people. As a black man, I don't want you to ever stereotype me. I don't want you to lump me in because you see this going on over here. So you want to now lump me in and say I'm one of those folks, right? And all of a sudden, one is going to represent the masses. I'm going to say the same from the law enforcement standpoint, right? I will never, ever do what I hate. And I always challenge people, never do what you hate. There are good law enforcement people who really care about the community. What happened in Minneapolis, that officer should be under the jail. But we also have to understand in that communication piece, man, there are some good people that love their job and love their community, right? And so if we get to the point where we can all talk and say, because look, there are law enforcement officers who see things and say, I don't like that guy's attitude and how he interacts with white folks or black folks or, you know, the inner city or whatever the case may be. You have some officers that don't like people in the suburbs because they think they're all rich snobs. So I'm going to embarrass them and say things, or, you know, or I'm going to treat this person and handle them differently because they're black. And listen, if we sit down and we're able to talk about it, and we sit down and you understand where I'm coming from, right? And I had to say this because I was having a discussion with someone else, and they said, they made this jump of, wow, so you're saying, the situation that happened, there's some reason or some understanding. No, well, there was a reason it happened with Floyd, right? Officer was an idiot. Officer was racist. Officer, whatever it is, he was just a bad officer, right? And in law enforcement, as far as I'm concerned, we are obligated to take those police officers that we know are problems and get rid of them. Okay, whether it's getting them charged, whatever the case may be. But boy, you didn't know that until we started talking. You just assumed the thin blue line, right? The thin blue line for some of those law enforcement folks means that is the line where we protect our society and our community. It's not the line that says we protect our officers, right? Because the reality is, as a police officer, I hate when it comes to crime. So if you're an officer who you treat people wrong, or you're a criminal, or you do wrong things, you are the person I hate. I have no problem putting handcuffs on you. But until we talk about it and discuss it, I think it's just missed out. And so we just continue to argue. And that is where we miss the opportunity for growth.
Well said. Well said. And so that growth coming from those conversations, I want to get to a little bit of a tactical side of this and bring in Dory about how we assure ourselves that these short-term conversations actually lead to sustainable long-term action. What are ways to make sure that we are making sure we're getting something out of this that can actually lead to sustainable change?
Sure. And I have a very simple directive, although that doesn't imply ease, right? We know that simple is not easy. Jonelle just hit the nail on the head when she said intentionality. Yes. We need an intentional and sustained effort at making this change. It needs to be intentional and it needs to be sustained over a long period of time. And I think that that's where we as athletes and as former athletes, we kind of have an advantage in this, is that we know that while people may have some natural talent or a natural inclination to something, the way that we get to mastery over a skill, the way that we get to the point of being able to consistently demonstrate a skill over a period of time is by intentional and sustained work at that. The reason why it's a thing of beauty to watch Steph Curry shoot a basketball, the reason why Katie Ledecky looks like a fish in water when she's swimming, the reason why watching Simone Biles do anything is just like a privilege to watch, because these people have put in thousands upon thousands of hours of intentional, sustained effort at this skill that they really want to be great at. And if we want to build a more multiculturally inclusive and competent society, we're going to have to engage in intentional and sustained effort. Hashtags are great. Having the conversations with your family members and your friends and doing that reflection and reading the books, those are all wonderful, wonderful things. Those are very pivotal first steps into building up our competency in this area. But if we want to have long-term change, if we want to see policies enacted, if we want to see policies changed, and if we want to change the hearts and minds of people, we're going to have to really harness this momentum and move it forward down the line.
Yeah, and a follow-up to that, and I want to bring Kayla in on this, because from a student-athlete perspective, I think many of us on the outside, we look at it from a student-athlete, it's like, okay, practice, games, school, lunch, practice, more games, school, lunch, that sort of thing. What are the conversations happening right now, even from afar, with your teammates about changing how much you guys are interacting and the conversations and having the impact that maybe, especially for those who weren't even aware of all of the injustice and discrimination that was happening, how all of a sudden you can use that teammate, that locker room sort of bond to make this conversation happen and sustain?
Right. So essentially it's basically all been about educating. So we go to Northern Kentucky University. So before we didn't used to have like a lot of like Black girls on our track team. So now I think our coach started recruiting a lot, and now it's just becoming everything's a learning experience. Everyone's learning from each other. Everybody is getting a little better understanding of how certain people live, you know? So I think that the best thing that I guess I've been trying to do, and some of my friends have been trying to do, is making people aware of what's been happening, just tapping into what people around them are enduring and not allowing, people to just stay in this little bubble where everything's safe and everything's okay. And I wake up, I go to school, I do this, I do that, and blah, 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 and everything's fine. Making sure that people are aware. So like taking this time to making sure that everyone's educating themselves is the most important thing to me and a couple of my other fellow athletes. And it's things like the fact that I think we had a conversation about this the other day, that we had a conversation about, I'm just going to be really real with you, cops killing Black people saying that, oh, well, they kill everybody, they're not, targeting you guys. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, you have to educate yourself. Taking the time to look it up. I mean, although half the people shot and killed by the police are white, Black Americans are shot at a disproportionate rate. So we account for less than 13% of the US population, but we're killed by police at twice the rate of white people. And I dropped that little truth bomb in and kind of tell them, these are the facts here. I'm not just talking out of my, behind. I'm telling you right now, these are the things that are happening right now, not just everywhere, not just here, but everywhere. But we're dealing with it here. And, I think from a privilege standpoint, that it's a little bit why people need to educate themselves and try to come to a better understanding. Whenever I try to educate, I always come from a standpoint of love. I never want to ever, make somebody feel as though I'm attacking them for not knowing, because that's the biggest danger to our society right now, just not knowing. If you're not aware and you don't know and you're not educated, that's partially where, hatred comes from, a misunderstanding, not being understood, not understanding. You're told one thing by your grandfather from 10 years ago that would happen to him, and you grow up thinking that that's true for everybody. So I like what Michael had said before about, he doesn't want to be generalized just based off of, something that somebody had said. Everybody is different. And I think that, I've been telling, my teammates, stand up for each other and speak out for each other. If you see something that's happening that's wrong, speak up against it, and I'll say this last little tidbit, because this is something that I feel very strongly about, and you guys are completely welcome to disagree, because, this is a conversation. This isn't just, me talking and then you guys are like, oh, okay, and then move on. I want you guys to, understand what I'm saying here. I think when somebody asks me what I think about privilege and how, privilege works, I say, if you can sit at home and turn on the TV and turn on the news and open your Twitter account and watch, Black women and Black men and people of the Latinx community, people just being murdered, and you can turn the TV off and you can, close your Twitter down, ooh, that really bothered me. I don't really like seeing that. I just watched a man, be suffocated for 9 minutes. I don't really like that. The fact that you can see that and then you can just turn it off and you can turn around and go out and live your everyday life without living in fear. I think, to me, that's a privileged standpoint. And I think seeing something like that, it should trigger something in you. It should make you upset. It should make you, what can I do? This isn't right. I don't want to see my brothers and sisters out there being killed. I mean, I think that is the perfect point to use to your advantage. This hasn't just been happening just now. Social media is so prevalent, and we see things happening every day now. Social media is bringing things to light, and a lot of people can't just sit by and watch it happen anymore. Things are beginning to happen. So I think that if you can take that privilege and say, well, I don't want to see that anymore, I'm going to turn off and walk away and continue on with, say, how do I educate myself? I think the best thing that can happen.
Yeah. And to build off of that, Dory, and to kind of go back to what you're talking about with multicultural competence, awareness being sort of that first major step. And I think if there's anything that we can say, if you're not aware right now, then you're not paying attention. No one watching this right now isn't aware. So now what are the steps beyond the awareness that Kayla so eloquently talked about, that we continue to take so that we can actually see that competence take root?
Sure. Well, the first thing that came through my mind just then when Kayla was talking about not being a bystander, I used to be an elementary school counselor in my former life, and we say, when you see something, don't be a bystander, be an upstander. You know, come in and stand up for somebody. And you know, if we have to take our lessons from elementary school kids, then we'll take our learning directives from elementary school kids then. But I think that what we're describing here, just to Will's point, is multicultural competence. I'm a counseling professor, and so one of the things that I do, my favorite component of my job, is I teach classes on counseling diverse populations. And so that's what we're all describing here, is how do we become cross-culturally competent? How do we engage people in conversations and in dialogue when they're different than us, when they have different backgrounds or different value system or a different belief system, a whole different set of lived experiences. And the way that we do that is three components. We have awareness, knowledge, and skills. And so the first component of it is awareness. How do you bring into your own awareness that you are a multicultural being, that you have a lot of dimensions to your identity that are, some of them chosen by you, some of them have been chosen for you, some of them are static, some of them are dynamic and they're going to change and evolve over time. But you have to build your own awareness. You have to, just like Kayla was saying, when you turn on your Twitter or you turn on your TV and you see things, bringing into your own awareness, that doesn't happen to me. This happens to other people. And doing that comparison and starting to say, wow, people are treated differently based off of this totally arbitrary thing of skin color. This is really not okay. So you're bringing into your own awareness of that. The second piece is knowledge, where you're actually starting to go out and do the work to learn about other people's experiences. And I think a lot of those of us in the majority, a lot of white people right now are in that place of reading books and asking questions. And I keep seeing all of these things from all of my Black friends and Black colleagues that I know. They're like, I'm so sick of explaining race to white people, you know, and it's just like, oh gosh. And I just imagine that most Black people want to have a conversation with white people where a white person is coming in and saying, you know what, I've thought about this, I've engaged in this conversation, I've read this book, this is what my experience was like. What has it been like for you? Not, hey, explain race to me, and I'm gonna take my notes here, and we're gonna figure this out. You have to engage people in dialogue, and you have to do that in a genuine way where you elevate people to being the expert on their life, that you believe them when they tell you these stories, that you're not saying, yeah, but what about this thing? It's, wow, I'm really sorry that happened. How can we make this better? And that's when you move into the skills component. The hashtags are great, but we need to start doing things that are actually going to move the needle on bringing about effective change. We have a system of policies that are well rooted in racial stereotypes and racial prejudices. Those things didn't happen overnight. They're not going to get solved overnight. That's what I was saying, that sustained and intentional effort. We need to be able to move through this either on an individual level or maybe on a small group kind of community school level kind of advocacy before we move up to like a public arena level of advocacy. I'm really getting into my counseling competencies here as I'm like rattling through these things, but there's this. None of this is new. We're not reinventing the wheel. We just have to actually follow the wheel on this. We just actually have to follow these steps. We can get there. It's not an impossible task. It's just going to be a long task.
I'm going to tie a lot of this together because I think a lot of people are going to be watching this, and this is furthering their conversation. This is furthering their awareness, take the first step, and then furthering their knowledge as it relates to it. So as we look at sort of takeaways from this, actionable items that we can utilize in this, Janelle, I'll go to you from an administrative sort of standpoint, is that you're probably certainly as aware as anybody could be in your position, but now all of a sudden more and more people inside your building, as they come back to school, as you're having conversations now, are aware, have the knowledge. What do we want to do next? How should people be learning about the struggle of whether it's student athletes, coaches, administrators within your building, or then externally and how they're interacting with the world? What should we be doing next to help improve the world for all, especially as it relates to college athletics?
Absolutely. And I just want to pause for just a minute and say, Dory, like virtual high five, virtual fist bump on that, because that was a mic drop. That was just everything we needed to hear and what needed to be said. And so just thank you for saying that, because you were right on point with that one. And Will, just to answer your question, again, it just, from an administrative perspective, I'm just going to keep hitting on the point of intentionality. It's got to be intentional. We have to create spaces. We have to continue the conversation, and we have to educate ourselves. I mean, shucks, we work in higher education. How dare we just come to the office every day and just sit and not be working and honing our craft? We'll do that. We'll jump in on some professional development in a minute. But what does that look like? I can read leadership books every day. I can attend webinars and do different things. But what am I doing to educate myself in this space? And, I challenge colleagues. We still have institutions to this day that in their senior leadership, there's not one person of color at all. So my challenge to my white colleagues is, can somebody please ask why? Be bold. Ask the question and wait until you receive the answer. Be a part of the solution. It starts in our hiring processes as administrators. When we have coaching pools, when we have vacancies and openings, who are we reaching out to? Where are we posting those jobs? What does your network look like? If you were to sit down and write down 10 names, different positions, different departments, or maybe 20, are they all women? Are they all men? Are they all Black? Are they all white? That's a great place to start. Diversify your pool, diversify your network, so that when you have those questions, you're not just wearing out your colleague perhaps, but you can pick up the phone or shoot an email and ask somebody else, or what we talk about in church, reaching across the aisle. We have to work. We have to continue the work. We have to continue the conversation. We have to be intentional, and we have to be vulnerable. Those are my answers to that.
Yeah, well said. A virtual high five on that as well. Mike, I want to take it even a step up the ladder higher as a member who mentors kids in the community, board of trustee members. So you're looking at it from a whole institutional level and even from a community level. What are those conversations like in terms of people equipping themselves to be better agents of social change?
Sure. Well, a couple things. One, as I tell kids that I work with, that I mentor, don't let someone dictate who you are, how you act, and what you believe. Don't stereotype, and don't allow someone to impact you. My dad, my dad grew up in Luverne, Alabama, in the South, and I remember he had a conversation because I, in high school, was kind of going through my own little racial issues, and if I'm being honest, I had a serious dislike of white folks. I had a friend, Veronica Vons, who was shot and killed by 3 white guys. And I was just, there was a lot of hatred. And so my father, Christian man, an amazing, beautiful man, 5th grade education, one of the smartest guys I know. He said to me, when I was going through one of my moments, my comments, he said to me, he said, hey, you don't like white folks, you say, because of what happened to Veronica Vons. And I said, you're absolutely right, Dad. So you're right, I don't. And he said, well, let me ask you, had she been killed by 3 Black guys, would you hate all Black folks? And it was the first time I realized that I just accepted I had an anger and a dislike towards people just for no reason. I use excuses, but I actually just had a dislike and an anger. And it was the first time where I had to sit down and realize that just has to change. It was my first communication where it impacted my life. And my father said, and I'm going to challenge everyone here, God doesn't have a love of color, right? He doesn't have, for God, it's not just social justice, it's justice. It's justice, period. If we take that global perspective of, look, man, I'm going to treat you right because of who you are and not what you look like. And this is what I tell police officers too, right? So if you think about Martin Luther King, and I love Martin Luther King, some of his quotes, right? But he talked about how not being judged by the color of your skin, but by the content of your character. Check this out. This is Martin Luther King should have been a trainer at the police academy. Why? Because has someone come up and said, hey guys, you should judge people off of their behavior and not the content of their color, or not where they live or anything like that, right? Things would be a lot better, right? I was a very active law enforcement officer, and I love my job. I think I was partially good, and what I do now in my world is I read behavior. And so I would love for us to take the approach of, look, I'm just judging you off of what you present to me from the inside out and not the outside in. And from a perspective of what we're talking about today, listen, our athletes, they should be the leaders of all this, and I'll tell you why. And you guys, having been there, look, when we look in a huddle, we see so much diversity, right? We see black, white, short, tall, right? Big, small. We see that diversity, and we love and depend on one another in that game. We are committed, and we don't say, whoa, wait. No. This black guy or white guy, we have to change that. We don't say that. So we, having had that experience and understanding what inclusion is all about, right? I don't like the word using diversity much, because I always feel like diversity is kind of it's just my opinion. So, don't get angry. Diversity is one of these things that, I think of, okay, you have 3 whites, 2 blacks, 1 Asian, 1 this, and 1 from the LGBT community, right? Instead, I don't want you to, because there may be more good people of that color. I don't want numbers. I want you to include me. I want you to say that I can come to the table and I'll bring my best cake. And man, if it's the best, we're going to take you. That is what this is all about. It's about you not having to say to Mike Peterson, oh, because you're black, we're going to, let you come in and talk. No. Listen, I'll get there. I can do the job. Just give me the opportunity. And I think if we take those steps and we honestly, goes back to what we all talked about, and we talk about it, and how I feel, right? Man, what an awesome opportunity and change will take place. And by the way, I love this country. I think this country is the best country in the world. We'll always love it. I've been around the world 10 times, right? And call me Dorothy, but there's no place like home, right? So if we take this opportunity to work and get past this, get to a better place, we're ahead of the game. God bless you.
Yeah. Awesome stuff. All right. Now, the Horizon League has said that the attention span of those people watching this are probably not going to make it to the end of this entire chat, but it's been so really, really good that I do want to make sure that everybody gets a parting shot in terms of true action items moving forward, whether it's going to be something that you want to see implemented in your particular role and involvement with the institution, or something that you hope everybody in a similar position as you is going to be able to do moving forward. So Kayla, I will start with you. All of a sudden we've seen athletes sort of adapt into a role of being more than just an athlete, but being agents of social change on their campus. What's your message for your fellow student athletes across the Horizon League for how you want to see them actionably moving forward?
I would say I'm proud of you just because it's never just been, coming to Northern Kentucky University was the ultimate power move I've ever made in my entire life. I love it here. I've made so many great friends. I think that every friend that I've made has been so willing to try and understand. Even if they can't understand, they're trying so hard, and it's so adorable. I love it. And I think that they really do care about each other. I can't speak for every university, but you can see it's a genuine caring for each other. I don't want to watch my friend go through that. I don't want to sit here and hear somebody talk poorly about you. I see it every day. I remember being in a situation where somebody was talking poorly about a friend of mine, and I witnessed another friend step in immediately, that's not true. You don't say things like that about somebody else. Just the fact that I've just noticed people are willing to step up. People are willing to step up to the bat really try their hardest to be there for each other, especially like right now. Like we want to be there for each other, and people want to learn. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think that just having inclusivity and making sure that, you know, everyone feels that they're in a safe environment, just feeling that, you know, we're going to be heard. Like if I go to the office and I say something just happened to me and I'm not okay with it, what's going to happen to me? Do I feel, I'm going to say, yes, I do feel comfortable to do that, because my administrators, I think that they feel strongly about, you know, certain things, and they want to make sure that, you know, nothing is getting swept under the rug in athletics. So when I say like something just happened to me, can I go to somebody? Can I say something to somebody? Or can I say something to my fellow student athletes, and will they back me up? Will they support me? And I can say confidently, yes, with where we're at right now, yes, we can. Can I say that about every school across the board in the Horizon League? I'm not sure, because they're their own, you know, they know better than I would about their own lives. But I would love, you know, to be able to just say like, I'm proud of everybody, and I want people to continue to educate themselves and continue to, you know, stand in the gap for people who can't, you know, stand up for themselves any longer. You know, don't allow your fellow teammate to be berated by somebody else, or, you know, don't let somebody, you know, endure harassment because of the color of their skin or their sexual preference. None of that. Stand up for the people that you know, you love and care about, because Mike is exactly right. When you're standing out there, when, you know, for football, when you're in a huddle, you know, you look around and all you see is different faces. You're not just looking at somebody who is exactly like you. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own, you know, wonderful qualities about themselves. And especially in track and field, people say it's an individual sport, which it is, but it also is a team sport. And when I'm sitting out here, I don't just focus on me ever. I'm always the kind of person that's like, I just finished my race, but my friend is about to run the 100, so I got to run back and cheer them on. You know what I mean? It's never been, you know, it's all about me. It's about, you know, the inclusivity of everybody that has been a part of the team, and wanting to make sure that, you know, everyone feels supported, is loved, and feels secure. And I think moving forward, that kind of agenda needs to continue. And especially within administration, I won't speak for you guys, but just making sure that you are moving with intention and allowing us to feel, you can come to me, you can talk to me, you can tell me what's happening, you can tell me how you feel about something. What do I need to do? What can I do to help? Just having like that open door policy. Are your open doors really open? Stuff like that. So I'll close with that. But other than that, yes, thank you for having me, and I'm done talking. I talk a lot, sorry.
And she segues right into the administrative portion of it. So Janelle, when we look at what those lasting changes are going to be across the board, you've touched on a couple of different ideas. I know you have some stuff to add to it as well. How can we take this strong, vibrant message that we're getting, especially from our young people, from our student athletes, and keep it sustained within our athletic departments?
Absolutely. Continue the conversation. It needs to be monthly. It may need to be weekly in some places. Whatever it looks like on your campus, make an effort, make a concerted effort to continue the conversation. Is it building a mentor-mentee, for lack of better words, program, pairing people up together? Is it, you know, the AD saying, hey guys, we're going to read or girls, we're going to read this book, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to come to every other staff meeting maybe, and we're going to talk about this book. We're going to kind of have a book club. You know, is it partnering with your diversity, equity, inclusion offices on campus and getting in the programming that they have already, bringing them over to your spaces. You know, just offering there's so many different avenues. Google is right at our fingertips. Educators are right at our fingertips. Experienced leaders and speakers that go around and do this for a living are at our fingertips. So there's absolutely no excuses for not continuing the conversation. A lot of things we talk about from a budget standpoint is putting money behind it. If we're intentional and we're truly focused on this and we want to see change, we need to put the money behind these efforts to make sure that they're being done. That's going to show that we're committed to it, and that we want to have it happen, and that we want to see change, not just in our own institutions, in our own spaces, but outside. Everybody, we work in athletics. It's a competitive thing. Use it as a competition. Everybody wants to be the first to create something. Well, you have the opportunity now to be the first to create something, not just to check the box, but for it to be meaningful for everybody involved, student athletes, coaches, staff, and even if we're reaching across campus, continue to have the conversation.
Passionate, strong stuff there. And I think while we have a lot of, I'm assuming, student athletes and administrators and coaches who are going to be watching this and learning from this, Mike, I really hope that there are a lot of stakeholders of institutions who are watching this as well, whether they be donors, whether they be past administrators, faculty members, whatever it might be, that are, I mean, on the outside of athletics, but want to see this change and get better. What would be your message for those folks?
Yeah, so I think it's what you just said. You are a learning institution. You're a learning institution. You're a learning institution. So it is an opportunity to teach, to have an impact. And you know, as crazy and bad as the situation may appear, man, what an awesome opportunity. I always tell people, you know, God gave you a rainbow to tell you how to weather the storm. Weather the storm. We got to weather the storm and we'll be fine. So for those athletes out there that are watching this, look, you are all warriors. You have been warriors all your life. It's what we do. It's who we are. You go out and you make a difference and you make a change and you do it with love. Don't do what you hate. Don't say what you hate. Those law enforcement folks out there, listen, treat them like they're your family. You know what? If I treated people that I arrested like they were my family, wow, be a lot better off, right? So we can all do this. Universities can do this. Community can do this. Athletes, we can all do this, but we have to take the one approach. And I'll use this word and people think it's corny and hokey, but it is true. It's love, right? My wife, love her to death. Don't always understand how she feels and what she says until we sit down and we start talking. And once we do, holy cow, then I realized just how wrong I was. Not just kidding. But so we're blessed. So look, Horizon, thank you all. And I just have to say that I really, really love the fact that this is more than just a show. This is a show and tell. And I love that. So thank you.
Wow, man, there are so many good, like, poster-worthy stuff in this conversation today. Like, great quotes that we could be putting up there, T-shirts made and everything like that I think help continue this conversation. And Dory, I'll leave you with the parting shot from your standpoint of anything that you've heard, actionable items moving forward from a counseling standpoint that you really think could help with this conversation.
Goodness. Well, I mean, I'm a professor, so I'm a huge proponent of just reading more books. Even if they're fiction books, I don't care. Diversify the people that you're getting input from. Don't just get input from people who look like you and sound like you. Find a genre of book or film or whatever that you like and expand your horizons. There are so many different points of view. It's going to help you. It's going to make you better. The only other thing that I would really like to say is that when it comes to advocating for people and standing up for people and doing this competency, we really need to, those of us who are in a position of power, those of us who are in a position of privilege to be doing the advocacy, we really need to see our opportunities to either advocate with someone, like alongside of them, doing the work, empowering them to use their voice. We also have to recognize our position of power when we have to advocate on behalf of someone, when maybe there aren't opportunities for people who have a voice, who are able to effectively voice their concerns, or maybe they don't feel like they have the agency to actually bring about that change. It takes those of us who have the power, who have the privilege, to do that advocacy on behalf of folks. And so I think that it's really important that you see those opportunities and know when our voice and our action is needed on behalf of people, or when we're able to empower people up to do that work on their own. So.
Great stuff. Phenomenal words all around. And as someone who's broadcast dozens of Horizon League championships and hundreds of Horizon League games over my time, this is without a doubt the most important broadcast I've ever been a part of within the Horizon League. So thank you so much, panel. Thanks again to the league. And I hope that, in an era of everything going viral. I hope this goes viral because I think this has been a phenomenal opportunity for folks to learn and continue moving forward. Thank you all so much for being here today.